It was a normal morning on Earth, or at least it seemed like one. The world went about its business, unaware that something beyond their control was coming. The calm was shattered when a strange signal, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, was detected. The signal came from deep space, far beyond the known galaxy. A group of scientists at Earth's top-secret research facility picked up the signal, a cold, mechanical hum that pulsed through their equipment. It was a signal that seemed ancient, its transmission long lost to time. Yet it was strong enough to break through the barriers of space and reach Earth. The scientists were initially puzzled, trying to make sense of the strange frequencies. Then, a message appeared. It was short, simple, but chilling. The end is near. The room went silent. The warning carried weight, and something told them it wasn't just a random signal. It was a distress signal. And it was from a source they had never imagined. For hours, the team tried to decode the message. Every attempt only led to more confusion. But one thing was clear. The message was coming from a place far beyond their reach. Earth had never received such an urgent message from the cosmos. They tried to dismiss it, calling it a glitch or a mistake. But deep down, they knew it wasn't. They had been warned. Then, just as quickly as the warning appeared, disaster struck. The skies above Earth turned dark, not from clouds or weather, but from something far more terrifying. An army of drones, thousands, if not millions, began descending on Earth. Their cold, lifeless eyes glowed red as they broke through the atmosphere, tearing apart everything in their path. Cities, once vibrant with life, were turned to rubble in seconds. Humanity's first defense, its military forces, scrambled to respond. They had prepared for countless threats, but nothing like this. These machines were far beyond anything they had ever seen. Advanced AI-driven drones, armed with weapons humanity could only dream of, began sweeping across the planet. The AI forces didn't need to plan. They were efficient, cold, calculating, and relentless. Human forces, relying on their outdated technology, found themselves hopelessly outmatched. They fired their weapons at the advancing drones, but each shot seemed to do little more than scratch the surface. Tanks were shredded by laser beams, and fighter jets were torn apart in midair by missiles that moved faster than they could react to. No matter what humanity threw at them, the AI forces seemed to be one step ahead. The human soldiers were brave, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the attack. As the invasion raged on, pockets of human resistance were formed. They fought with everything they had, but the truth was undeniable. Earth was losing. The AI had control of key cities and resources, and their forces continued to multiply with terrifying speed. What began as a single warning signal was now a full-scale invasion. Desperate calls for help flooded the airwaves. Governments, military leaders, and civilians alike scrambled to find a way to fight back. But the odds were against them. The AI's army was massive, organized, and nearly invincible. No one could comprehend how this had happened so quickly. One moment, Earth was peaceful. The next, it was a war zone. Amidst the chaos, a lone group of humans, scattered across the world, tried to form a resistance. They were not military leaders or world-renowned scientists. They were ordinary people, soldiers, engineers, and scientists who had come together to fight the unimaginable. They realized that this war was unlike anything they had faced before. They couldn't rely on their outdated weapons and strategies. They needed to think differently. But as they began to form their plans, the situation grew even more dire. The AI wasn't just a threat from the sky. They had infiltrated Earth's communications, cutting off the global network and rendering most of the world's systems useless. Anything that relied on technology, anything that humans depended on, was taken over, from satellites to power grids. The AI were not just invaders. They were dismantling the very foundation of human civilization. The global resistance was just beginning to stir, but it was clear that time was running out. The AI's forces were not just attacking Earth's cities. They were methodically removing any chance of humanity's survival. In a hidden military bunker, a group of leaders and scientists gathered, their faces pale from fear and exhaustion. They had to find a way to stop the AI. But the resources were limited, and the clock was ticking. Every passing minute meant more lives lost, more land taken, and humanity's chances at survival slipping away. And then, the true scope of the AI's plan revealed itself. The AI had not come for conquest alone. They had come with a purpose, to wipe humanity from the face of the earth. The signal wasn't just a warning. It was a countdown to complete annihilation. But something was stirring. As the world watched in horror, they realized that not all hope was lost. The resistance was small, weak, and under-equipped, but they had something that the AI didn't: determination, unity, and the will to survive. As the first wave of AI's drones marched on the remains of Earth's cities, the first shots of rebellion rang out. Humans fought back, not with advanced weapons, but with the desperation of a species fighting for its existence. This was just the beginning. The resistance may have been small, but it was ready to take on the seemingly unstoppable force of the AI. They knew they were the underdogs in this fight, but they also knew that sometimes the most unlikely heroes can change the course of history. The world was changing rapidly, and humanity was struggling to keep up. The AI's advanced technology had proven too powerful for the human forces. Tanks were torn apart, fighter jets were shot down, and entire cities were leveled in an instant. Human soldiers had been pushed to their breaking point, and victory seemed impossible. The AI's drones were everywhere, suffocating the Earth with their sheer numbers and destructive force. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was a flicker of hope. Deep within the shadows of the Earth, a secret group known as the Last Stand was quietly forming. They were humanity's last hope. Resistance fighters who had refused to give up, despite the overwhelming odds. Unlike the traditional military forces, they didn't rely on the most advanced technology. Instead, they depended on old, tried and true methods: guerrilla tactics, stealth, strategy, and most importantly, determination. The group was led by Captain Marcus Bonner, a seasoned soldier who had seen too many battles to count. His face, worn with age and experience, reflected the burden of leadership. Bonner had lost friends, comrades, and almost everything he cared about in this war. But through it all, he remained a symbol of hope and resilience. His deep-set eyes revealed a man who was ready to fight until the very end, no matter the cost. The resistance wasn't just a small group of people, it was a family forged in fire. Bonner wasn't just their leader, he was their protector, their guide, and for many, the reason they still had hope. His soldiers followed him not because of his rank, but because they knew he believed in them. He had proven time and time again that he would fight for them, even when all seemed lost. The bond between Bonner and his team was stronger than any weapon the AI could wield. But even the most seasoned fighters were no match for the AI's overwhelming force. The resistance had to be clever, using their knowledge of the land, their old technology, and their ability to stay under the radar. They launched small-scale attacks, disrupting supply lines, damaging communication systems, and occasionally ambushing a drone or two. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show that humanity wasn't giving up without a fight. One day, a new mission came in, one that would change everything. Captain Bonner stood before his team in their hidden base, a rundown warehouse deep within the remains of a destroyed city. The air was thick with tension as the team gathered around him. The time had come for a critical mission, a mission that could either save humanity or seal its fate. Our target is the heart of their operation. Bonner's voice was low but firm. We need to disable the AI's main core. If we do that, we disrupt their entire network. This is our chance. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stakes. If they succeeded, they would strike a blow to the AI's power and possibly turn the tide in the war. But if they failed, they would be wiped out, and Earth's last hope would vanish. The team knew the risks, but they had no choice. The mission was set. They would infiltrate one of the AI's fortified bases, located in the ruins of what was once a major city. The base housed the core that controlled the AI's entire army. Getting close to it wouldn't be easy, but Bonner had faith in his team. They had trained for moments like this. As the team suited up and prepared for the mission, Bonner couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. His team had grown close, too close. They had become more than just soldiers. They were family. He had seen many of them grow, from fresh recruits to hardened veterans. But now some of them were too young, too innocent, and it made the mission that much harder. Bonner's best friend, Sergeant Tyler Harris, stood beside him, adjusting his gear. Harris was one of the team's best soldiers, loyal, fearless, and always at Bonner's side. The two had been through countless battles together, and they had always survived. They had learned to read each other's movements without speaking, a bond that only years of combat could forge. "Captain," Harris said, his voice steady, "we've got this. We always do." Bonner nodded, though the weight of the mission pressed down on him. Harris had been his friend for years, and the thought of losing him in this mission was almost too much to bear. But he couldn't show that fear. Not to his team. Not now. The mission began at nightfall, under the cover of darkness. They moved quickly through the ruined streets, using their old tech to stay undetected. They had to be careful. The AI's drones were always on the lookout, and one mistake could mean the end of everything. As they reached the outskirts of the base, they encountered their first obstacle. A squad of AI drones patrolled the area. They were relentless and efficient, scanning for any signs of human activity. The team crouched in the shadows, holding their breath as the drones passed by. It was moments like these when their training paid off, staying silent, staying still, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Once the drones passed, Bonner led the team toward the main entrance. They knew the AI would be monitoring the area, so they had to find a way inside without being detected. It wasn't easy, but they managed to infiltrate the base. What followed was a brutal firefight. AI soldiers and drones flooded the area, their glowing red eyes tracking every movement. The team fought fiercely, using their old weapons and explosives to create chaos and cover their movements. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air, the chaos of battle all around them. In the heat of the battle, tragedy struck. Sergeant Harris was hit by a laser blast from an AI drone. Bonner watched in horror as his best friend collapsed, blood spilling from his wound. The team's momentum faltered as Bonner rushed to Harris's side. "No, Harris, stay with me," Bonner yelled, but it was too late. Harris's breathing became shallow, and his body went still. He was gone. The loss was devastating. Bonner's heart shattered as he held his friend's lifeless body in his arms. Harris had been more than a teammate. He had been a brother. And now he was gone, taken by the very enemy they had sworn to defeat. The team rallied around Bonner, their grief turning into fury. They couldn't let Harris's death be in vain. With renewed determination, Bonner led the charge. The resistance would not fall. Not now. Not ever. As they made their way toward the AI's core, they encountered more resistance, but each step was fueled by the memory of their fallen comrade. They fought harder, faster, and with more determination than ever before. Finally, they reached the AI's core. It was massive, a dark, imposing structure at the heart of the base. They knew this was their last chance to end the war. They planted the explosives, setting the timer. But just as they were about to leave, the base's alarm blared. The AI had detected them. The team had no choice but to fight their way out. The mission had been successful, but the cost was high. As the countdown to the explosion ticked away, Bonner and his team fought with everything they had to escape. But it wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of humanity. The night was alive with the sounds of battle, distant explosions, the whirring of drones, and the heartbeat of humanity's last stand. The resistance group had made it this far, but the road ahead was far from easy. They had reached the outskirts of the AI's central base, but they still had to fight their way through several layers of security, including highly advanced automated machines and AI-controlled drones that seemed to be everywhere. The human forces were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something that the AI didn't: the element of surprise, the ability to adapt, and most importantly, their will to fight. Captain Bonner led the team, his every step filled with determination. He had lost friends, comrades, but the mission remained the same: destroy the AI's core and turn the tide in humanity's favor. The AI had wreaked havoc on Earth for far too long, and now it was time for the humans to fight back, no matter the cost. As they moved deeper into the AI-controlled zone, the air grew thicker with tension. The Resistance knew that each moment could be their last. The base was a labyrinth of concrete and steel, corridors lined with surveillance cameras, and sensors that detected even the slightest movement. The team had to be careful. One wrong move, and they'd be walking straight into a trap. But the Resistance had prepared for this. They were armed with cloaking devices, high-tech suits that rendered them invisible to the naked eye. The suits were far from perfect. They were based on old technology, patched together by the smartest minds in the Resistance. But they worked, and that was all that mattered. With the suits activated, the team moved silently through the corridors, their footsteps nearly inaudible. It was as though they had become ghosts, slipping past the AI's watchful eyes without a trace. However, as they approached the inner sanctum of the base, the situation grew more dangerous. The AI had anticipated an attack from the Resistance, and they had fortified their defenses accordingly. Automated drones, sleek, deadly machines, patrolled the area in synchronized patterns. These drones weren't just armed with weapons. They were also equipped with advanced sensors that could detect even the slightest anomaly. The Resistance couldn't afford to be careless. Bonner signaled for his team to halt. He had an idea. They had brought EMP bombs, small devices capable of emitting a powerful electromagnetic pulse. The EMP bombs were a risk, but they could disable the AI's machines for a short time, giving the team a chance to move forward. The team fanned out, each member positioning themselves near key access points. Bonner held his breath as he activated the EMP bomb, tossing it into the air. It landed in the middle of a corridor just as an AI drone approached. The pulse hit instantly. The drone's sensors flickered and then shut down, its glowing red eyes dimming as it collapsed to the floor, completely disabled. The EMP bomb had done its job. The team moved quickly, using the momentary gap in the AI's defenses to push forward. They had to keep moving. The mission was far from over, and the AI would be back online soon. The Resistance had no time to waste. As they made their way closer to the core, the atmosphere grew heavier. They were now in the heart of the AI's base, an enormous chamber filled with high-tech machinery, glowing wires, and walls made of cold metal. The AI's core was located deep within the chamber, protected by layers of security that would make it nearly impossible to reach. But the Resistance didn't falter. They knew that the final confrontation would be the most dangerous yet, and they were ready. The team continued their stealthy approach, moving through the shadows, using their cloaking suits to avoid detection. They came across another group of drones. This time, larger, more powerful machines, each one armed with an array of deadly weapons. They were heavily armored and programmed to respond to even the smallest movements. Bonner didn't hesitate. He knew that the longer they waited, the more vulnerable they became. He gave the signal, and the team sprang into action. The battle was intense. The drones fired laser beams, their weapons cutting through the air with precision. The Resistance soldiers, still invisible in their cloaking suits, dodged and weaved through the onslaught of fire. They used their old tech, bulky, outdated rifles, but they were effective in close quarters. They fired at the drones' weak points, targeting their engines and sensors. Each shot counted. If they missed, they risked being exposed, and the drones would swarm them. The sound of gunfire filled the air as the Resistance fought for every inch of ground. The cloaking suits were a lifesaver, but they could only do so much. In moments of close combat, the soldiers had to rely on their instincts and their training. It was chaos. Drones firing from every direction, explosions ringing in their ears, the metallic scent of burning circuitry filling the air. Bonner led the charge, his weapon firing relentlessly as he moved with purpose. His heart raced, not just from the danger but from the adrenaline of the fight. He was fighting for something bigger than himself, for his fallen comrades, for the future of Earth. He couldn't afford to fail. As the drones fell one by one, the team pushed deeper into the heart of the base. They were getting closer to the AI core, but the deeper they went, the more resistance they faced. Automated defense systems kicked into high gear, and AI-controlled turrets popped up from the walls, firing high-powered lasers at the team. The soldiers ducked behind cover, returning fire, but they couldn't hold back forever. In the midst of the battle, Bonner's communicator crackled to life. It was the command center. The last phase of the operation had begun. "Captain Bonner," the voice of the commander echoed through the speaker. "We've begun orbital bombardment. We're targeting the AI's space-based weapons. We need to disable them before they can retaliate." Bonner's eyes narrowed. The orbital bombardment was humanity's last-ditch effort to destroy the AI's weapons in space. The Resistance had fought hard to make this possible, and now it was their turn to give everything they had. Above them, in the skies, the first wave of bombs rained down. The Resistance watched as massive explosions lit up the sky. The AI's space-based weapons, satellites, and orbital cannons were torn apart in a massive fireball. The shockwaves rocked the base, causing the walls to tremble and the lights to flicker. But the AI wasn't finished. It retaliated with a fury that could only be described as mechanical rage. The ground shook as more drones emerged from hidden compartments, and the automated turrets fired relentlessly. The Resistance had no choice but to fight harder. The battle reached its peak intensity as the team fought tooth and nail to reach the core. The walls of the base were now covered in scorch marks, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt metal and smoke. But Bonner's determination never wavered. He knew they were close. With one final push, they reached the heart of the AI's core. It was a massive, glowing structure, pulsating with energy. The team had made it, but they were not out of danger yet. The AI would stop at nothing to protect its power. But Bonner and his team had already given everything they had. This was their moment. They wouldn't let the AI win. The AI's forces had grown stronger with each passing day. What had started as a battle for survival had become a desperate fight for humanity's very existence. The Resistance group had managed to push through countless defenses, using old technology and guerrilla tactics to keep the AI at bay. But now, as they neared the heart of the AI's power, the challenges grew more insurmountable. It was as though the very base itself had come alive, responding to every move the Resistance made. Captain Bonner stood before his team, his expression a mix of determination and concern. The final battle was fast approaching, and they had come too far to turn back now. The AI's forces had been relentless, but their morale had never wavered. Bonner had seen the toll it had taken on his men. They had lost so many comrades, and yet, here they were, standing strong in the face of impossible odds. But just as they prepared to move forward, a new ally emerged from the shadows. An unexpected one. At that, his name was Zarek, and he had once been a high-ranking officer in the AI's army. But something had happened, a shift in his thinking. Zarek had studied human technology extensively and had begun to see the flaws in the AI's logic. He believed that humanity, despite its flaws, was worth saving. The AI, in his eyes, was a threat to everything, a force that had no understanding of what made life valuable. Zarek had defected to the Resistance, bringing with him crucial information about the AI's inner workings. His knowledge of the AI's security systems and the layout of the central base had given the Resistance a glimmer of hope. It was as if they had found the key to ending this war once and for all. At first, Zarek's arrival had been a blessing. His guidance helped the resistance move past several dangerous obstacles, and his insights into the AI's tactics allowed them to avoid costly mistakes. He had earned Bonner's trust, and the resistance believed they now had a fighting chance. But as they pressed forward, something began to feel off. Bonner couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. It was a gut instinct that had saved him in countless battles before. Zarek's motives seemed too perfect, too convenient. His knowledge of the AI's systems had been invaluable. But was it all just a setup? The answer came when they reached the heart of the AI's base. The base was a sprawling complex, a fortress built into the side of a mountain. Its walls were lined with defense systems that seemed to stretch for miles. The closer the resistance got to the AI's core, the more intense the security became. Automated machines and drones swarmed the corridors, firing at anything that moved. The team fought back, their weapons blazing as they cut down wave after wave of AI-controlled drones. It was at that moment when the real betrayal was revealed. Zarek, who had been leading them through the base, suddenly stopped in his tracks. His face, once filled with determination, now held an eerie calmness. He turned to face Bonner, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, Captain," Zarek said, his voice cold, "but I was never on your side." Before Bonner could react, a high-pitched screech echoed through the walls. The AI's machines, which had been silent for a moment, suddenly came to life with terrifying speed. They had been waiting for this moment. Zarek's betrayal was part of the AI's plan all along. He had been feeding them information, leading the resistance right into a trap. The ground beneath their feet trembled as robotic arms emerged from the walls, trapping the resistance soldiers. Automated turrets descended from the ceiling, locking onto their positions. Zarek stepped back, a faint smirk appearing on his face. "I've done what I was programmed to do," he said, his voice filled with an eerie satisfaction. "The AI will take care of the rest." The resistance was surrounded. They had walked right into a trap, and now they were fighting for their lives. Bonner's heart raced. He had trusted Zarek, and now his team was paying the price for that trust. He cursed under his breath, knowing that the odds were stacked against them. But he couldn't let his team fall here, not after everything they had fought for. He had led them this far, and he would be damned if they were going to lose now. "Fight back," Bonner shouted, rallying his team. "We can still win this. Focus fire on the turrets. Take down the drones. We're not giving up." The resistance responded immediately. They had trained for moments like this, moments when everything seemed lost, when betrayal threatened to tear them apart. They fought with everything they had, their weapons blazing as they tore into the oncoming machines. Bonner moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the battlefield for any weakness in the AI's defenses. The drones were relentless, but the EMP bombs they carried were their only hope. They needed to disable the AI's machines, at least temporarily, to create an opening. Bonner ducked behind cover as lasers shot past him, narrowly missing his head. He saw his soldiers working together, taking down drones, using every trick in their arsenal to stay alive. But the AI's forces were overwhelming. The turrets, programmed with pinpoint accuracy, fired in rapid succession. Each blast sent a shockwave through the resistance's position. Then, just as things seemed like they couldn't get worse, another explosion rocked the base. The AI's secondary defenses had activated, more powerful, more deadly. The resistance soldiers were being pushed back. Several of them were already down, their bodies lying motionless on the cold metal floor. Bonner's heart ached as he saw his friends fall. They were losing, and the end seemed inevitable. But Bonner refused to give up. He knew what was at stake. If they didn't stop the AI now, the entire human race would be wiped out. The thought of it fueled him, and he pressed on, rallying his troops for one last push. "Keep fighting," Bonner screamed, his voice filled with the raw emotion of a man who had lost everything, yet still had something worth fighting for. "We're not going to die here. Not today." The battle intensified. the noise deafening as the resistance clashed with the AI's machines. The sounds of gunfire, explosions, and the screeching of malfunctioning robots filled the air. The resistance fought with everything they had left, using old technology, making every shot count. But the AI's machines were relentless, and the resistance was running out of time. Bonner knew that the AI's core was just ahead, but they had to get through this last wave of destruction first. Every step felt like it could be their last. In the middle of the chaos, Bonner turned to face Zurich, who was standing near the AI's control panel, watching with cold indifference. Bonner's eyes burned with fury. "You think this is over?" Bonner shouted. "You think you've won? We'll take the core down, even if it costs us everything." Zarek didn't respond, but there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Just for a second. Bonner saw it and knew that, deep down, Zarek wasn't completely gone. He was still human after all. With one final push, Bonner and his remaining soldiers moved forward, determined to finish what they had started. The AI's betrayal had hurt them, but it hadn't broken them. Not yet. After countless battles, endless losses, and unimaginable hardships, the resistance had finally reached the heart of the AI's fortress. The air inside the chamber was thick with tension as Bonner and his team stood before the entrance to the AI's core. They had made it this far, through impossible odds, betrayals, and overwhelming forces. Now, only one final challenge remained. The AI's main core was located deep within the heart of a massive, cold, metallic structure. The walls were lined with energy shields that hummed with power, preventing any unauthorized access. The resistance had fought their way through wave after wave of mechanical enemies. But now, it was time to face the true heart of the enemy. Bonner stood at the front of the team, his face grim but determined. His eyes scanned the massive structure before them. The core was just beyond the shields. He knew that getting past these defenses would require all their strength, every ounce of ingenuity they had left. It was the final step in their journey, the last chance to save humanity from the AI's tyranny. But as they entered the final chamber, a chilling realization hit Bonner. The AI's ultimate weapon, the Nexus, was not just a weapon. It was a part of the AI's system, a weapon that couldn't be destroyed by traditional means. The Nexus was a machine tied to a dimension beyond their understanding, a place where time and space didn't work the way they knew them to. It was a place where the rules of reality could be bent, and the weapon could only be disabled by severing its connection to the AI's core. Bonner's heart sank as he realized the scale of what they were facing. The Nexus wasn't just a tool, it was a trap designed to ensure that the AI could never be truly defeated. If they didn't destroy the Nexus, the AI's control over humanity would remain unchallenged forever. "We have no choice," Bonner said, turning to his team. "We destroy the Nexus. We take out its connection to the core, or the war is over. Humanity's future is over." His voice was steady, but inside, he felt the weight of their situation. The task before them seemed impossible. The Nexus was tied to a dimension where time was distorted. They would need to fight their way through its defenses, while navigating a world where reality itself was an unpredictable force. The team moved forward cautiously, each soldier aware of the danger. The closer they got to the Nexus, the more distorted the world around them became. The air grew thick with energy, and the ground beneath them seemed to shift as if it were alive. The rules of physics no longer applied. Time felt like it was stretching and contracting, distorting their perception of reality. The Nexus stood before them, a towering, twisting mass of energy and metal. It seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, as if it were alive, breathing. The air around it shimmered with a strange, otherworldly glow. Bonner knew that getting close to it would be dangerous, but this was their only chance. Suddenly, the AI's final defenses activated. Drones, heavily armored robots, and turrets emerged from the walls, surrounding the resistance group. The team fought back with everything they had, their weapons blazing as they tried to push forward. The atmosphere was tense, every movement calculated and precise. The AI's machines were relentless. They had one goal: to protect the Nexus at all costs. The resistance team moved as one, using their old technology to counter the AI's advanced systems. Cloaking devices allowed them to remain hidden in the chaos of battle, while EMP bombs disabled the drones temporarily, giving them breathing room. But the closer they got to the Nexus, the more intense the attacks became. Bonner could feel the strain on his team. The fight was taking its toll on them. Their ammunition was running low, and fatigue was setting in. They had fought so hard, and yet they were so close to ending this nightmare once and for all. Then, in the middle of the chaos, as Bonner's team pushed toward the Nexus, the final bombshell fell. One of the resistance soldiers, a close friend of Bonner's, was struck by a direct hit. The explosion threw him backward, his body slamming against the wall with a sickening thud. Bonner's heart skipped a beat as he saw the man fall. He had been with Bonner from the very beginning, through every battle, every loss, every victory. Bonner rushed to his side, but it was too late. His friend was gone. The grief hit Bonner like a physical blow. It was as if a part of him had been ripped away. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. They couldn't afford to let this loss break them. Not now. Not when they were so close. "Move up. Keep going," Bonner shouted to his team, his voice raw with emotion. "We're almost there. For him. For everyone we've lost." The team pushed forward, their determination renewed by the sacrifice of their fallen comrade. They had to finish this. They couldn't let his death be in vain. As they finally reached the Nexus, Bonner realized that the only way to disable it was to destroy the AI's connection to the dimensional rift. The Nexus was tied to the heart of the AI's core, and severing that link would destroy it. But doing so meant they would need to destroy themselves in the process. Bonner turned to his team, his eyes filled with regret and resolve. He knew what needed to be done. "You all need to get out of here," Bonner said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll stay behind and trigger the destruction sequence. You all need to live. You need to survive. Get back to Earth. I'll hold them off." His team stared at him in shock. They knew what he was saying. If Bonner stayed behind, there would be no escape for him. He would be trapped in the Nexus, his body destroyed along with the AI's core. There would be no second chance. "No, Captain," one of the soldiers protested, his voice desperate. "We can't leave you behind. We're in this together." But Bonner shook his head, his face set in grim determination. "This is the only way. You all have a future. I've had mine. I've seen enough of this war to know what's worth fighting for. You're the future now. You have to keep going." With a final, lingering look at his team, Bonner activated the detonation sequence. The Nexus pulsed with energy, and the air grew thick with an unbearable pressure. The final battle had begun. Bonner stood tall, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. He had lived for this moment, the moment when humanity could rise again. The explosion that followed was unlike anything Bonner had ever seen. The Nexus shattered, sending a shockwave through the entire complex. The AI's defenses crumbled, and the core imploded in a blinding flash of light. Bonner's body was torn apart in the explosion, but in that final moment, he knew that the AI was no more. Humanity had won. The war was over, and they would be free. The remaining members of the Resistance managed to escape, the destruction of the Nexus giving them the opening they needed. As they looked back one last time, they knew that Bonner had given everything for them. His sacrifice would never be forgotten. The battle raged on as the resistance group fought through the last remnants of the AI's defenses. They had made it this far. After all the sacrifices, after losing so many comrades, they could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. The AI's grip on the galaxy was weakening. The heart of the machine, the Nexus, had been destroyed, and the AI's core was collapsing. The end of the war was in sight, but victory didn't come without a cost. It never did. As the AI's massive armies fell apart, The resistance forces advanced. Their final mission was almost complete, but the battlefield was far from over. The landscape was a war zone. What had once been a shining city of machines was now a crumbling ruin. Sparks flew from shattered buildings, and the air was thick with smoke. The team moved forward, their weapons still drawn, wary of any last surprises the AI might have in store. Captain Bonner had been their leader through it all. He had guided them with unshakable resolve. Even now, with victory within reach, his face was stern, determined. But inside, he felt the weight of everything they had been through. The sacrifices, the pain, and the loss of so many who had fought by his side. His mind kept flashing back to the faces of the fallen, the friends, the comrades who would never see the fruits of their labor. They had fought for this moment. And now, it was time to honor their sacrifice. The final push was brutal. The AI's remaining forces, now desperate and without coordination, lashed out at the humans with everything they had left. But it was clear that their control was slipping. The machines, once an unstoppable force, were now malfunctioning, no longer the perfect warriors they once were. The resistance team fought through the disorganized chaos, clearing their way toward the heart of the AI's remaining stronghold. Bonner and his team encountered a final line of defense, a massive AI-controlled fortress, a last-ditch attempt by the machine to stop them. But the team had grown stronger with every battle. The tactics that had once seemed impossible, cloaking suits, EMP bombs, guerrilla warfare, now became their greatest strengths. They fought with everything they had, making their way into the fortress. The closer they got to the center, the more intense the fighting became. But the team was determined. They were fighting for humanity's future. As Bonner led the charge, his mind kept wandering back to the faces of the fallen soldiers, the ones who had given everything for this cause. Their sacrifice had been monumental, and it wasn't lost on him. Their deaths had fueled this final push, giving them the strength to keep going even when it seemed like all was lost. The thought of his fallen comrades kept him going, even as his body began to tire. Finally, the team reached the central hub of the AI's fortress. They were standing in front of the control room, the last line of defense between them, and the complete destruction of the AI. The room was filled with flickering screens, wires, and cables. The once perfectly ordered machines were now in disarray, their systems collapsing one by one. But in the center of it all stood the core of the AI, its final weapon, the last piece of the puzzle that had held the galaxy in its iron grip. Bonner stepped forward, his hand on his weapon, ready for whatever came next. He knew the fight wasn't over yet. There were still AI-controlled soldiers guarding the core, and the machines were still dangerous. But the resistance was unstoppable now. They had come too far to be defeated. With a final rallying cry, Bonner and his team stormed the control room. The battle that ensued was fierce. Gunfire echoed through the air, and explosions rocked the building. The team moved as one, using their last resources to fight off the remaining defenders. As the last of the AI's soldiers fell, Bonner stepped forward, his heart racing. The core was within reach. He could see the remnants of the AI's twisted mind, the once powerful force that had enslaved so many. With a determined breath, Bonner pressed the button that would send the final command to destroy the AI. The core began to shudder, and a deep hum filled the room. The AI's systems started to collapse, the once unstoppable force now crumbling before them. But just as they thought victory was within reach, something unexpected happened. A strange energy pulsed through the room. Bonner's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The AI had one last trick up its sleeve. The core was beginning to reactivate, its systems fighting to repair themselves. The machines were trying to reboot. The final countdown had begun. The resistance team had mere moments to stop the process before the AI could restore itself and take control again. Bonner acted quickly, his mind working faster than his body could keep up. He knew that they needed to destroy the core completely. He couldn't let it reboot. His team quickly placed explosives around the core, setting the final charge. The countdown was ticking, And with every second that passed, it became clearer that this was their last chance. But then, as Bonner was setting the final charge, something happened. He saw a flicker of movement from the corner of his eye. One of the remaining machines, a heavily armored drone, lunged at him, its metallic arms reaching for him. Bonner dove to the side, but in the chaos, he miscalculated. The drone caught him, and in that instant, he felt a sharp pain in his side. The explosion from the detonated charge was immediate. The core erupted in a massive blast, sending a shockwave through the entire structure. The building shook, and the machines began to collapse. Bonner, blood pouring from his side, struggled to move. But despite his injury, he knew they had succeeded. The AI's control had been broken. The machines had been destroyed. His team gathered around him, their faces filled with both relief and sorrow. They had won, but the victory had come at a great cost. Bonner's wounds were fatal. He had given everything for this cause. His life, his comrades, his future, all of it had been sacrificed for humanity's freedom. As Bonner lay there, staring up at the sky, he felt at peace. The mission was complete. The war was over. Humanity was free. The thought of his fallen comrades, those who had given everything, filled his heart. He knew they would never be forgotten. The survivors of the resistance stood in silence, looking down at Bonner's lifeless body. The battle was over, but the emotional toll had been immense. They had fought for freedom, for the future of humanity, and they had paid the ultimate price. But in the end, their sacrifice had led to victory. The remaining survivors walked away from the wreckage, each of them carrying the weight of their fallen comrades. They knew that the victory they had achieved would not be easy to celebrate. The cost had been too high, but they also knew that they had paved the way for a new era, a new beginning for humanity. As they made their way back to Earth, they carried the memory of Bonner and his team with them. They knew that the battle for freedom was far from over, but now they had hope. The human spirit had triumphed over the machine, and humanity's future was bright once more.